Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Mercedes confirming a major upgrade on the way for the Austin Grand Prix. They hope will take them back to competing for race victories at a circuit which has historically proved to be rather good for them, but also a massive day in the world of Formula 1 because Haas have confirmed a technical partnership with Toyota. Toyota's returned to the Formula 1 grid for the first time in several years. What does that mean for their current relationship with Ferrari? Could Toyota come back to the grid full time in the near future? Very much intrigued to your perspective in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. This is a sneak peek of the grid as it used to look, basically, back when Toyota were last on the grid. And it's definitely been a long time since then. Let's just dive straight into it, right? So MoneyGram Haas F1 team confirmed today a technical partnership with Toyota GAZOO Racing. Of course, that's the entity that they go by in the WEC with the likes of Kamui Kobayashi, former Formula 1 driver, drives for them in that series, of course, Le Mans for the last couple of years, that type of stuff. And Haas confirmed. Now, this was rumoured a little while ago. I think we saw a little hint where maybe a couple of months back, one of the Toyota execs was in the Haas kind of, let's say, paddock facilities, as it were. But it's not like this was massively rumoured and it was like, oh, this is only a matter of time. This has kind of come out of nowhere on some level. And Toyota GAZOO Racing will provide design, technical and manufacturing services, while Haas will offer technical enterprise and commercial benefit in return. So, official technical partner of Haas is going to be Toyota, and this is a really big deal in the context of Formula 1 and in the context of Haas themselves. For the last couple of years, and understandably under Günther Steiner, we've been roasting Haas. It's like, what are they even doing on the grid? Why doesn't Gene just sell? I mean, 2021, for example, was an absolute disaster. Got better in 22 because they put all their effort into making that car good, and it was a little bit for some time, then they fell off a bit. Last year was not great either, and this year has been surprisingly good for Haas. There's no doubt about it. They've got an exciting driver lineup for next year planned with Ocon and Behrman coming into their team as well. And it seems Ayao Komatsu is absolutely cooking. Of course, Japanese team principal now for Haas has made something happen with Toyota, massive Japanese manufacturer. And of course, they were in Formula 1 for, well, not a massive amount of time, to be honest. I mean, the end of their tenure in Formula 1 didn't exactly go to plan for them, but nonetheless, it's a big deal for the sport, right? So it's going to be a relationship either way, and Toyota want to cultivate drivers, engineers, and mechanics alongside Haas. So seems like, you know, with Honda having a works partnership over there with Aston Martin now, maybe Toyota want to do the same thing in some respects with Haas. But this relationship is very confusing in some regards because what exactly it means, where the pieces are going to fall into place, and how exactly this whole enterprise is going to work, because despite the fact that Haas have done a lot better this season than previously, they're still all over the place as an organisation, right? I mean, they have Haas facilities over in the US, they have a Haas facility in the UK, they have Dallara that do lots of their manufacturing, and then of course they are partnered with Ferrari as well in Italy. And now they're also going to be partnered with Toyota GAZOO Racing's European hub, basically. So how is it all going to come together? I'm sure Ferrari have their questions on this as well, because effectively Haas buy everything they possibly can from Ferrari to chuck onto their cars, and it's worked. I mean, Ferrari have got better this year, therefore, in some capacity, so have Haas, but it just feels a long way away from when Komatsu at the start of the season said they're going to have the 10th fastest car, it ain't going to be pretty. They come out the gates with a pretty reasonable car that scored a lot of points this season and has been competitive in the midfield on numerous occasions, and now they're only strengthening this lineup. And you know, this is coming out of the blue on some capacity, but it's straight onto their car. The Toyota GAZOO Racing logo is right here. This is what they'll be running, of course, for the Austin Grand Prix. It's on the rear wing as well. So, you know, this is a serious partnership, right? They're not messing around here. And what it means for Haas in the immediate term, we don't really know the answer to those questions. And, you know, the branding will be there. And Toyota, how involved are they going to get in this project? Is this a step towards them being back on the grid? Now, Toyota, with this announcement, made it very clear, look, we're not going to try and get back into Formula 1, at least from like an engine capacity. They're not going to be making their own engine for 26 or anything like that. But they obviously are now back in the space sport in some capacity, and Ayao Komatsu has this to say: to have the world leader or a world leader in the automotive sector support and work alongside our organisation while seeking to develop and accelerate their own technical and engineering expertise is simply a partnership with obvious benefits to both sides. So, the idea is maybe that they can send some of their Toyota staff to work in the Formula 1 Haas Toyota partnership project that will benefit their own staff, and maybe they have something to gain out of it in the longer term as well. I'm sure that they feel like they do. It's just a big deal for Haas because not long ago they were legitimately the laughing stock of the paddock in many respects, and now under Komatsu, you've got to give them a lot of credit. They actually are a respectable organisation. They still have far fewer employees than many of the other top teams on the grid. Gene Haas does not seem willing to invest boatloads of capital to make this team a championship contender, but his decision to keep hold of the team, get rid of Steiner, bring Komatsu in, has seemed to be a rather inspired one with the way that things are currently trending. And of course, Haas will be hoping in the medium term this actually helps them move up the grid. That's what they say, that this technical partnership being able to bring on some top engineers and others potentially from the Toyota GAZOO Racing entity will potentially help Haas, because they don't have, Haas, as I say, a massive amount of employees as other teams do. They run on a rather unique structure where they basically buy everything they can from Ferrari and figure out the rest of what they've got to figure out themselves, and they do a pretty solid job at it. At least under Komatsu, it seems like that has been the case this season, but this is only going to make them stronger. And for Toyota to come to Haas and make this partnership happen is pretty commendable on both of the guys' ends, I suppose. I'm not really sure there was another better option for Toyota to partner with, but it's definitely an interesting one, and a team that is not uncompetitive as it currently stands in Formula 1. Now, Ferrari have their questions. They had their questions while these discussions were underway, and they wanted, certain assurances, certain requirements that the current relationship with Ferrari will be maintained in the capacity that they want it to be. So, Ferrari had to be clear that this is going to be a good idea for both parties, and maybe it can help Ferrari as well in some capacity in the nearer term. What if Toyota decide, all right, we're going to have our own team, but maybe they don't want to make their own engine, so they buy Ferrari engines or something. I don't know. I mean, you look at Honda, they don't have their own team. It's Aston Martin, but they'll provide the engines to that team. Toyota could come back and try and do a similar thing in Formula 1 again, but maybe not. I mean, Alpine, as we full well know, they are going to have Mercedes engines in 2026, despite being on paper a works team, as we know. But Alpine are a strange entity, as are Toyota in many respects with their past in Formula 1, and lots has changed since they were last on the grid in any capacity at all. But, we are wondering, therefore, is it possible Toyota come back on the grid full time? Will they, if this goes well with Haas, say, we want to just take over the team? And I'm sure that for Gene Haas, that's, he doesn't want to sell the team. He's never necessarily wanted to do so, because Haas is not only growing in value as an entity, like all of the franchises effectively are in Formula 1 right now, but it's also good marketing, free marketing for his own Haas automation company that he has. So Gene Haas has had no reason to sell the team. But if Toyota come along and say, look, we're partnered with you, we want to buy you, or we want to take over the team, I'm sure there might be something in that for both parties. So Toyota for now are saying, no, nothing of the sort's going to be happening. It's just, a step and a partnership to help both parties, and it probably will stay that way for the next couple of years. But if Toyota, let's say hypothetically, Honda and Aston Martin do very well in 2026 and beyond with Adrian Newey and everything, maybe Toyota think, all right, maybe a return to the F1 grid on like a full-time basis is going to be on the cards. But tweet your thoughts in the comments below, because, it's been a while since Toyota were on the grid, like 2009, of course, right, when all the drama happened with Brawn and Jenson Button wins the championship, Brawn win the constructors. Fernando Alonso had his last race with Renault before moving to Ferrari. I mean, what a picture this is. I mean, what a beautiful livery as well, I'm not going to lie. And of course, Kimi Raikkonen went on a sabbatical at the end of that season before coming back a couple of years later. Abu Dhabi held its first ever F1 race, and, slick tyres were in for basically the first time back then. So it's a long time ago in Formula 1. I mean, legendary teams like Force India, of course, on the grid back then, among many others, and all the sponsors you guys can see on the back definitely brings me back, to be honest. But these were very different times in this sport, but Toyota are most certainly still existing. Few other things to discuss as well. Lando Norris, as he likes to, with a few thoughts on the championship battle. we know that Max said that the titles are unrealistic while basically the car performance stays as it is. And like, you can debate that, because at the end of the day, despite the fact that the Red Bull is currently inferior to the McLaren, it's still a 52-point lead. Max is still the favourite. The title is certainly not unrealistic, but like, if Max's car performs as it did in Monza every weekend compared to the McLaren, then yeah, the title is unrealistic, because he's going to be struggling to get top 5, top 6, whereas Lando should be winning most of the races. So, you know, if that's true, then sure, the title maybe is unrealistic. In the current state of Formula 1, the title is most certainly not, it's definitely realistic that Max wins it, and he would be the favourite to do so. But Norris actually responded, and it is interesting, and it will be interesting with other, I wouldn't even say friendships precisely, but just in terms of driver pairings, even at the same team, that will get on okay, or maybe quite well, when the team is not so competitive. When things are competitive, then it becomes a different story. And for Norris and Verstappen, despite being on different teams, there's a similar thing here, where they were and are good friends. But that will and will probably continue to change if they are in heated title fight. It's just how it goes when the stakes are this high. So Norris says, that is just Max saying what he wants to say. Even if I win every race, catching him is still not an easy thing to achieve, so he is easily the one in the better position. I'd much rather be in his position than in my position, and as soon as Red Bull can figure out where they've gone wrong, I expect them to win a few races, to be fixing their problems, and come back strong again. It's not like they've been that far off at every race. Monza was probably their worst, as I said, but Max has still not been far off in many races. He is certainly close to winning. I think he just says it to make himself feel a bit better. He's still in a much stronger position than I am. So, look, is Lando wrong? No, I think he's probably correct. But it is interesting, right? Because Lando and McLaren, and this is always the case with the driver that is favoured or the team that is favoured, they will always try and play down their chances. Mercedes did this for years. Red Bull did this as well for years, when they're like, oh, well, this weekend is probably one that's going to catch us out, and, you know, Max would still win by 20 seconds. And Mercedes did the same thing back in the day as well. And Lando, you know, it makes sense. Play down the pressure, try and put the pressure back on Max from a public perspective, take the pressure off yourself, because, you know, if Norris comes out to the media and says, yeah, you know what, I should be catching it, we've got the car advantage, maybe for some drivers, that's a beneficial mentality, to put yourself under immense pressure than actually, no, you've got the best car, you are the favourite, and you need to be winning everything. And maybe for some drivers that works and they really deliver. I don't think that's the case for Lando. I think that Lando performs better if he says, you know what, actually, no, the pressure's on Max to hold on to this lead, I'm the one making the comeback here, and, you know, the pressure's on Red Bull to deliver rather than on our team. And I think that's the mentality that most drivers tend to adopt in this type of circumstance. It's certainly the one that Lando will adopt, and I think will benefit from adopting. But, you know, whether that's enough to win, of course, very much easier said than done. But as I said, some drivers that you'd think would get on quite well, that will happen and could be the case while the team isn't so competitive. But if it is, then it's a different story, right? For example, next season, I don't expect fireworks between Albon and Sainz, because the Williams isn't probably going to be that competitive. We have already seen far more fireworks between Norris and Piastri now that they're in a competitive car than we did, let's say, early last season when the car was not especially effective. But I would expect the same thing to happen on some level with Leclerc and Hamilton as well. These are two guys that get along very well, and Leclerc has incredibly high praise for Hamilton, as of course he well should, talking about how it's a great benchmark for him, saying how, like, when a champion like Lewis gets to any team, brings a lot of motivation out of every single person. He will come along with all the experience he's had over the year with Mercedes, a different way of working, a different vision. This is always benefiting the team, saying it's amazing for me because he'll have the same car as the most successful driver in F1 history. That'll be extremely interesting for me to learn from one of the best ever, as well as a really big challenge and motivation to beat Lewis, to show what I'm capable of. With Lewis joining the team, he will definitely be a benchmark, so it'll be very important for me to be on my top level. So it's going to be great, I think, this opportunity from Leclerc to learn from Hamilton. I think it could be beneficial the other way around as well. And I think in the early days, Hamilton and Leclerc will likely get on very well, probably better, I would say, than Hamilton and George do right now, and George Russell, of course. But that will change if the team is competitive. If the car comes out of the gates next season, that Ferrari is competitive, then I think Hamilton-Leclerc is a fascinating driver lineup to watch. Because on paper, it's the strongest on the grid, no doubt, in my opinion, right now. And if the car is competitive, it is going to be fireworks in that team. And we've seen it even with the Mercedes not being that competitive over the last couple of years, that the behind-the-scenes stuff with Hamilton and Russell has been interesting to say the very least. That will certainly be true at Ferrari if the car is competitive, and, well, that remains to be seen, of course. Mercedes, though, Hamilton's career there is not done yet. They have a few more rounds to go, 6 races, 3 sprints, of course, and it's a big weekend for basically every team in Austin. We have this second summer break, this autumn break, whatever you want to call it, and Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, all the contenders, they have upgrades in the pipeline. Mercedes, though, say their upgrade is substantial. I think Ferrari are slightly less bullish on theirs. I mean, they brought a new front wing to the Singapore Grand Prix, Ferrari, and that was going to be part of their package that they brought to Austin. It's interesting the way that some teams do it, because McLaren have definitely favoured an approach of not bringing small, intermittent upgrades. They just bring one package, because sometimes if you bring one new element of an entire package you're planning to bring, but that element is ready first, you know, it might make your car faster, but it also might throw off your understanding of the upgrade, and when you bring the other parts, does that inform your decision making? It's difficult. It's easy if you're McLaren to do that because you've got the fastest car, but that is McLaren's favoured approach, whereas teams like Ferrari, Mercedes, even Red Bull, they'll prefer to bring smaller bits that, you know, they hope will give them marginal gains. McLaren have the luxury of maybe not needing that right now, but like Mercedes say they were just slow in Singapore, very painful evening for the team. They're not really sure so much as to why, but like James Allison has made it very clear there's a substantial new set of clothes for Austin. The belief is that it's going to be floor related, maybe like front or rear wing related, but you know, a lot of the development work is probably to do with the floor that the teams are working on, again, because it's all about how close you can get the car to the floor on a consistent basis, and if you can find just a slight gain there, it means you can run the car a millimetre closer to the ground, and that's going to increase your lap time by something that's actually quite substantial. So there definitely are a few tracks from now to the end of the season that Mercedes should be better at. Of course, they've generally been better suited this year to the higher speed tracks, the ones they won, of course, Silverstone, and then Spa, even Austria. They didn't really deserve to win Austria, but, you know, the crash, of course, between Norris and Verstappen allowed Russell to take the victory there, and then Hamilton got the 2 victories shortly after that. They won 3 out of 4 Grand Prix in that span, but then, of course, it's massively dried up. The performance has fallen away, and at maybe slightly less traditional circuits, they've been kind of back to where they were almost at the end of 2022 when they won in Brazil, and yet still in Abu Dhabi, they were quite a way off the pace. And this season, it's not been a massively dissimilar story to that really for Mercedes. They've clearly made strides. They're much more competitive than they were last year. And even, you know, recently they've been in the conversation for front row starts, for podium finishes, but it's not been optimal. And they will hope that with some of the races still to go, they'll have a chance. Some circuits have suited them historically. Austin has been a good one. Brazil has been a good one as well, of course, at Interlagos. I think those are the 2 that Mercedes should be, frankly, targeting. The win is maybe not impossible, but certainly targeting podiums, double podiums, could be on the card at those rounds. But, you know, the win might be a stretch given the strength of the McLaren, and also the fact that Red Bull are also bringing a major upgrade package themselves that they believe is going to take them back to McLaren and be, you know, once again in a position to ensure that Norris does not make the comeback in this championship, which is absolutely possible either way. I think it's a big weekend for Mercedes. It's probably the biggest weekends ever for Red Bull. They need whatever they bring to the car to work. If it doesn't, Max's departure for 2026 seems generally quite likely, given the way that the grid currently stands, because if this upgrade for Red Bull doesn't work this upcoming weekends, then there is basically no confidence they're going to be able to turn things around for 2025. If it does, then it's a very different story. But of course, if Red Bull bring an upgrade that works, but Mercedes bring an upgrade that works better, and so do McLaren, then the same conversations start to come around. So very much intrigued to your thoughts, as ever, on all of this stuff in the comment section below. This is just the race map as well, just to look at all the races that we have had this season and all the winners of those respective rounds. And in recent rounds, of course, it's been largely McLaren wins. Of course, we saw Leclerc win famously in Monza, and it's been a while since Verstappen has won a Grand Prix, of course, and we have 6 rounds yet to go. If Verstappen wins any of the final 6, I feel like he will be holding on to this championship, but if he doesn't, and Norris can win 4 or 5 of those 6, and maybe a couple of sprint races as well, then it's most certainly still alive. So hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.